I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here telling a story like this, but honestly, I don't see any other way to get it off my chest. My name's Mike, and I was with my wife, Jessica, for about 8 years. We were pretty solid, or so I thought. We had the typical ups and downs, but overall, I believed we had a good thing going. We bought our dream house about a year ago, big, beautiful, everything we wanted. We were finally settled, planning our future. Like most couples, we had our little arguments, but nothing that seemed too serious. But things started to change about 3 or 4 months ago. Jessica, who used to be pretty affectionate, started acting distant. She'd cancel plans last minute, get defensive if I asked where she'd been or who she was with. And I noticed her phone was always glued to her hand. She'd hide it when I came near, and I'd catch her deleting texts or hiding apps. She'd brush it off, say I was imagining things. She'd give a sassy laugh, say I was overthinking, and that she was just busy with work or some girl stuff. The thing is, I wanted to believe her, I really did, but something didn't sit right. I decided to check her phone once just to see if I was being paranoid. She always said I was insecure, but I trusted her. Still, I needed peace of mind. So one night I slipped into her room and grabbed her phone when she was in the shower. I wasn't snooping, just checking to see if she was hiding anything. And what I found made my stomach drop. It wasn't just some innocent texts. There were messages from a guy named Kyle, the contractor renovating our home. I recognized his name because he'd been working on fixing up the backyard, the patio, all that. But the texts weren't about work. They were flirty, suggestive, even downright sexual at times. "Can't wait to see you tonight," one said. "Wish you were here with me," another text read. And there were pictures not just of the house but of Kyle's face, his abs, and what I can only describe as explicit messages exchanged between them. I stared at the screen in shock. My hands started to tremble. My mind spun. I couldn't believe Jessica, my wife, who I thought was faithful and loyal, was sneaking around with Kyle, the guy who was supposed to be fixing our house. It felt like my whole world was shattering in that moment. I didn't even know what to feel first: anger, betrayal, sadness, confusion. How could she lie so effortlessly? How long had this been going on? I felt betrayed not just by her, but by the entire picture I'd built our life on. I stayed up all night trying to process what I'd seen. I kept telling myself it was just a fling, a mistake, something she'd somehow justify. But I knew deep down there was no excuse for this kind of betrayal. It wasn't just about sex, it was about trust, or the lack of it now. The next morning I made a decision. I couldn't keep quiet. I had to face her, hear her explain herself, and figure out what I was going to do about it. Because this wasn't just a mistake, it was a gut punch that changed everything. The moment I saw those messages, I knew I couldn't just brush it off or pretend I hadn't seen a damn thing. My mind kept racing, trying to find a way out of this nightmare. Jessica was still sleeping when I got up the next morning, but I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. I felt cold, like I'd been punched in the gut, and I knew I had to confront her before I lost my mind. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I didn't want to yell or rage, not yet. I wanted her to own up, to tell me the truth. I waited until she was in the kitchen making coffee, acting like everything was normal. That's when I finally threw it out there. "Jessica, I saw the messages, the ones with Kyle. Tell me what's going on." Her face stiffened immediately. She looked surprised at first, then her eyes narrowed into that familiar bitchy glare she always had when she was trying to spin a lie. "What are you talking about? You're crazy. You're paranoid. Just because I checked my phone doesn't mean anything." I felt my pulse pounding. "Save it, don't lie to me. I saw the pictures, the texts. Whole thing. You've been screwing around with Kyle behind my back. How long has this been going on?" Her lips curled into that dismissive smirk, like she was annoyed I even brought it up. "Oh, please, that's just some stupid joke you're making. Kyle's a contractor. He's been here fixing the backyard. You're overreacting as usual. You always assume the worst. Maybe I just like a little fun. Maybe I needed someone to talk to." I clenched my fists so tight I felt the nails digging into my palms. "You're full of shit. I saw the messages, the sexting, the photos, all of it. Don't lie to me now. How long has this been going on?" She rolled her eyes and huffed. "It's none of your business. I was bored, that's all. Kyle's just a guy I talked to. We never did anything. You can't accuse me of cheating just because I had a few conversations. You're so insecure. Insecure, I felt like I'd been sucker punched. I couldn't believe she had the nerve to call me that. I couldn't believe she was trying to diminish this entire thing as some stupid emotional affair. But even as she spewed her bullshit, I saw the flicker of guilt behind her eyes. The way she avoided my gaze, the way her voice cracked slightly when she tried to deny everything. I knew she was lying, but I also knew, deep down, that this wasn't just about a mistake or some flirtation. It was something much worse. I stayed silent for a moment, trying to process everything. My mind was a tornado of hurt, rage, and confusion. I wanted to scream at her, to call her out for all the lies and betrayal, but instead I just asked, "Did you sleep with him?" Her face twisted into a snarl. "Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. What if I did? It doesn't mean anything. It's not like I love him. You think I'm some kind of slut. I'm not that easy." That was the last straw. I felt my blood boil. Here I was, thinking I was the only one she cared about, and she's out there screwing around with a guy who's supposed to be fixing up our dream home. I couldn't believe how cold and manipulative she was being. That's when I realized I had to step back, breathe, and think about what I was going to do next. Because this wasn't just about catching her cheating, it was about my own dignity and what I deserved. And right now, I was furious, hurt, and trying to hold my shit together at the same time. After she finished her little defensive spiel, I just stood there, feeling like I'd been hit by a train. My mind was a mess, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. Not without facing consequences. I was furious, but I also felt a strange numbness settling in. It was like I'd been betrayed so badly that nothing else mattered anymore, not her excuses, not her tears, not her sneering "it's none of your business." I told her to sit down. She looked surprised, maybe even a little scared. Good. I needed her to hear me clearly. I said, "Jessica, I don't know how long this has been going on or how many lies you've told me, but I do know one thing. I don't want to be with someone who cheats on me. I thought I married someone I could trust, but clearly I was wrong. If you're screwing around with Kyle, that's over. I want you to pack your things and leave tonight." Her eyes widened, and for a second she looked genuinely annoyed. The bitchy smirk was gone, replaced by a flicker of fury. "Are you serious? You can't just throw me out like that. Who do you think you are? I'm not some little girl who's going to run when things get tough. You're overreacting like always." I clenched my jaw. Overreacting? You're the one sleeping with the contractor fixing our house. That's not overreacting, that's betrayal. So don't give me that crap. I don't want to hear any more lies. You want to lie and deny? Fine, but I've seen enough. I want you gone tonight, and I mean it. She scoffed and crossed her arms. "You're so dramatic. If you think I'm just going to leave like some helpless victim, you're dead wrong. I have rights too. I'm not just going to walk out and leave everything behind. We're married, Mike. You can't just throw me out." That's when I felt the anger boiling over. "Rights? You think your rights matter more than what you've done? You've been sneaking around with Kyle our contractor, no less, behind my back. You think I'm just going to forget about that? No, Jessica, you lied to me for months. You played me for a fool. You want rights? Fine. You want to stay and fight? We'll see how that goes." She glared at me, but I saw the cracks in her false bravado. She knew she was caught, and she didn't like it. I told her I was done playing her games and that she could pack her things or I'd call the police and have her removed. I wasn't about to be manipulated anymore. The betrayal cut too deep. I wanted her gone, and I was ready to make that happen. Within an hour, she was packing her bags, throwing a tantrum, calling me every name in the book. I stayed in the other room, trying to keep my cool, but inside I was a storm of rage, heartbreak, and confusion. I had given her chances before, but this time, I knew I couldn't fix what she'd broken. I had to think about what was next, how to rebuild my life from this mess. But one thing was clear: I would never trust her again. Never. That evening, as she stormed out with a suitcase in her hand and her bags for good, I felt this strange mix of relief and devastation. Part of me wanted to shout at her, to tell her how much she'd hurt me, but I just watched silently as she slammed the door behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. I sat on the couch, my mind replaying everything, her lies, her sneers, the betrayal that cut deeper than anything I've ever experienced. I spent the next few hours trying to gather my thoughts. I kept asking myself how I'd let it get so bad, how I'd missed all the signs, how I'd been so blind. I'd always been a trusting guy, maybe too trusting. Jessica knew that, and she played me for a fool. Her bitchy attitude, her lies, her manipulations. I'd always thought she was just strong-willed, maybe a little difficult, but I never thought she would cheat on me with someone like Kyle. It felt like my world was crumbling, and I couldn't do anything about it except sit there and process it all. But then a strange thing happened. About an hour after she left, I decided to check the shared cloud folder where she kept all the home renovation photos. I figured maybe I'd find some proof of her sneaking off or some hidden messages in the comments or file names. What I found made my blood run cold again. There was a folder labeled Kyle, a series of photos, all taken late at night from different angles, including some that looked suspiciously intimate. I saw screenshots of their texts, even a couple of pictures she must have thought she'd deleted. That's when I realized she'd been hiding a lot more than just her phone. She'd been sneaking around, possibly even planning to see Kyle behind my back after I went to bed. The thought of her in my bed, lying to me, cheating, it made me so sick I almost threw up. I couldn't believe the woman I'd married was capable of this level of deception. All those late nights, the excuses about working late, meeting friends, or shopping, none of it was true. She was with him. Behind my back, every time she told me she loved me, I felt a surge of rage and betrayal I'd never experienced before. My fists clenched, my heart pounding. All those years I'd given her, trusted her, built a life with her, and now I saw her for what she really was. A liar, a cheat, someone who didn't give a damn about me. She'd wanted her fun, her secret sex with Kyle, while I was at home thinking we were solid, thinking I was doing right by her. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't keep living in this hell, knowing she'd betrayed me so openly. I wasn't going to play the victim forever, but I also wasn't going to let her control the story. I decided I'd gather all the evidence I could find, not just for myself, but to confront her fully, to make her see how badly she'd screwed up. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done. That night, I sat there in the dark, staring at the screen, realizing that everything had changed. I was hurt, angry, and trying to hold back tears. I never thought I'd be one to get cheated on, let alone by someone I loved so much. But I also knew I wouldn't be a fool again. I'd rebuild, even if it took all the strength I had. And from now on, I'd be more cautious about who I trusted. Because trust, it turns out, is a fragile thing, and once it's broken, it's almost impossible to fix. The days that followed were a blur of emotions: anger, sadness, and a strange sense of clarity I hadn't had before. I spent hours going through every piece of evidence I'd found on the cloud, trying to piece together just how deep this betrayal went. Jessica's lies had woven a web around us, and I was finally seeing the whole thing clearly. She thought she could get away with it, but I wasn't about to let her. I made a decision. I'd confront her again, but this time with everything laid out in front of her. I wanted her to understand just how thoroughly she'd screwed up. I also knew I had to protect myself from heartbreak, from more lies, and from her manipulations. I wasn't planning on going back, but I needed closure. I couldn't keep living with this gnawing feeling that I'd been played for a fool. So I waited a couple of days, giving her some space, then I called her. I told her I wanted to talk face to face. She was reluctant at first, but I made it clear I wasn't backing down. When she showed up at my place, her eyes were defiant, but I could tell she was nervous. I had the files ready on my laptop, the proof of her messages, photos, everything. I sat her down and looked her straight in the eyes. "Jessica," I said, voice cold but controlled, "I've seen everything. The messages, the photos, the secret folders. You've been lying to me for months, hiding this affair from me, and I'm done pretending it's not a big deal. You cheated on me with Kyle, our contractor. Do you want to tell me why? Or do you want me to just read all this out loud?" She clenched her fists, trying to look tough, but I saw the cracks. "It's not what it looks like," she snapped. "It's just sex. It doesn't mean anything. I was bored, I swear. Kyle, just some guy who was here fixing the house. It's not like I love him or anything." I shook my head. That's bullshit, Jessica. It's not just sex. You've been sneaking around, lying straight to my face. How long has this been going on? How many times? Her eyes flickered with irritation. Look, I was just having some fun. You're so damn insecure, always accusing me of stuff. Maybe if you weren't so controlling or paranoid, I wouldn't have done it. And honestly, I don't even care if you're mad. I don't need your stupid marriage to be happy. That really pushed me over the edge. I felt my blood boil. You don't care, after everything we had, after all those years. You think you can just cheat, lie, and then brush it off like it's nothing. Well, I've got news for you. I'm done. I want you out of my house, now. She looked like she was about to argue, but I cut her off. No more excuses. You want to play the victim, fine, but I won't be part of this circus anymore. You're not just leaving for good, you're leaving with nothing. But the clothes on your back, I want you gone tonight. She yelled, calling me every name in the book, but I didn't care. Her words bounced off me. I'd already made up my mind. I knew I'd be better off without her, even if it hurt like hell. I watched her storm out, grab her stuff and leave, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut, but also like I'd finally started to breathe again. And yet, as I sat alone in my house that night, the emptiness was almost worse than the pain. She was gone. The house felt cold and silent without her. I kept looking at the evidence I'd collected, trying to make sense of everything. How I'd missed the signs. How I'd trusted her and she'd used that trust as a weapon. I knew I had to start over to rebuild what was broken, both in my house and in myself. Because if I learned anything from this, it's that betrayal cuts deep, and once trust is gone, it's nearly impossible to get back. But I also realized something else. I was done being the victim. Now I was the one in control of how my story would go next. In the days that followed her departure, I found myself living in a strange limbo. The house, once a symbol of our shared dreams, now felt like a mausoleum of betrayal. Every corner, every quiet moment reminded me of Jessica and how she had shattered everything we built together. I kept replaying all the signs I'd ignored. Her dismissive attitude, the late-night texts, her dismissive laughter when I questioned her. It stung, knowing I'd been blind for so long, trusting her when she was busy sneaking around behind my back. I threw myself into fixing the house, not just physically but mentally. I needed to reclaim my space, my life. It took some time, but I learned to breathe again, to focus on myself instead of obsessing over her lies. Friends reached out, and I found comfort in their support, even as I fought off the feelings of heartbreak and bitterness. I realized that I'd lost more than a wife. I'd lost my sense of innocence about what trust really meant. But somewhere in the wreckage, I found a resolve I never knew I had, to never let myself be that naive again. Looking back, I see now how much she took for granted, my patience, my love, my belief in us. She thought she could cheat and lie her way out of it, but in the end, she only ended up pushing me away for good. I learned that revenge isn't about petty payback or anger. It's about standing up for yourself, about knowing when enough is enough. I didn't need her anymore. I didn't need the pain or the lies. All I needed was to reclaim my dignity and move forward. Now I'm rebuilding my life step by step. I've started seeing a therapist, working on rebuilding my trust in myself. I've also come to accept that some betrayals leave scars, deep ones. But I've also learned that scars fade. They don't disappear entirely, but they remind you of what you survived and how much stronger you can be on the other side. So if there's one thing I want to say to anyone out there who's going through this kind of heartbreak, it's that you will survive. You will be okay. It's going to hurt like hell, but eventually the pain turns into a lesson. It teaches you who you really are, what you deserve and what you won't tolerate. Trust is fragile, yes, but it's also something you can rebuild, carefully, patiently, with people who truly respect and value you. And as for me, I'm choosing to focus on that brighter future. I won't forget what she did, but I refuse to let it define me. I'll take the lessons, pick up the pieces, and move on. Because in the end, betrayal only shows you who's truly worth your time, and I've learned that the hard way.